Hello, this is Lawrence Lewis.
And this is Sister Christian.
Today is Wednesday, April 29th. This is the Producer's Happy Hour, a daily podcast with two producers on opposite coasts, reaching out to our filmmaking and live event community to hear your stories about how the pandemic has affected you, your life, and your work.
Your stories let us know that we're not alone. It's important for us to keep sharing our experiences and ideas. They help us so much.
And you can share your story by emailing us, or better yet, record a 1 to 2 minute voice memo and send it to producershappyhour@gmail.com. Just follow the instructions on our website, producershappyhour.com.
And please share the show with your friends, family, colleagues. We want these stories to be heard. We think they're important and they've been helping us. So we hope that they're helping you as well.
Yes, and today we are chatting with the amazing experiential director, a true creative mind, Yehuda Duenyas.
Christian. Go ahead.
We both had the good fortune to work with, in fact, together on a very elaborate project.
A very elaborate project. Yehuda is great. He has such a different perspective. He's kind of at that other end of creative, which is amazing to work with somebody like that, because in the end, you have to creatively produce them.
Yeah, you do. And it's a different approach. Somebody's like, they just want a nuts and bolts producer, stay out of the way of the creative. Yehuda likes a creative producer to be partnering with him on projects.
Yeah, it's very rewarding because, you're listened to as a producer.
All right. So, Christian, it is Wednesday, week 7.
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing? Things are shifting, right?
Things are shifting, I feel, which...
Yeah.
We're all going to react to it in our own way. I've heard on the side from a lot of people that they're not ready.
Yeah.
Because they're concerned about what we're going to be, the world that we're going to go back to. And they're also concerned about their safety. So I had a lot of talks going on. I'm glad we're doing this because it's really confirming some of the fears that I have. Not thinking that they're valid, but still.
Yeah. Which are what? I know we've talked about them, but...
The fears are opening too soon, being the one to have the job and calls the crew, and the crew feel obligated for a couple of reasons. Either they need the money or because you're the one asking, and I never want to put anybody in any kind of danger or their families. That's not what we do. Yeah. I don't see where you can cover every single, it's a airborne disease. It's not bloodborne. You just can't protect the entire air around everybody. So until I see a better plan or more solid guidelines or safety measures, it just makes me nervous. That's all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now we've seen the AICP yesterday. They put out some guidelines.
They did.
Nothing groundbreaking there.
No.
All the same stuff we've kind of been thinking of.
And, to be honest, it's all in theory because we've not done it yet.
It's all in theory. I know.
Yeah. Our whole, I kind of feel like our lives right now are kind of in theory. We've never done this before. And it's getting back to it and everybody's ideas. I get them. I get it. But we're all kind of living in a in theory world right now.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some people out there shooting, but we don't know. There's some people out there shooting, I'd imagine.
If you are and you want to be anonymous, give us a ring. We'd love to hear
what's
happening.
How you're doing it.
Yeah.
Well, what we are going to do, though, is we are gathering some crew members, below the line crew members, to do some crew safety roundtables with us.
Right.
So we can voice, because everyone's putting out these parameters, production companies, entire countries, AICP, but I haven't seen anybody really talking to crew. Maybe they aren't behind the scenes. I don't know. But we want to do crew roundtables where people get to voice their opinion on what they need to see happen before they return to a film set. So if you want to join the discussion here on the podcast, email us, producershappyhour@gmail.com, and we'd love to have you on and have a chat.
Yes, it's very important because we have to feel if I'm the one implementing this or making sure that the guidelines are being adhered to, I want to make sure that I've heard everyone's voices. So I need them. Let's go.
It's important. It's
exactly.
Important. Yeah.
How are you today?
I'm okay. I'm also kind of, I don't know, reacting to, we're in this different phase right now of this thing, right? Now there's more protests and much more desire for things to kind of get back to whatever the new normal is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm hesitant about work, the kind of work we do, because I don't want to get it wrong. If we get it wrong, somebody gets sick.
Right.
That's very different than if we get it wrong, whoops, maybe, we spent a little too much money on the camera budget and we could have, you know what I mean? This is a much different thing. It's like, oh, that permit didn't come through. We have to change that location.
Right.
Big deal. You still get your thing.
Mm-hmm.
If we do this wrong, somebody gets sick. Somebody can get their family sick. Somebody can get an elderly person sick. And worst case, somebody can die. Not to be an alarmist, but this is what we're dealing with is people's health. And that's a very different set of responsibilities.
Yeah.
As producers, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And we won't even know for 3 weeks. We know that it's super contagious, but it's got a very long incubation period. So it's very risky.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you got an antibody test yesterday. Is that correct?
I did.
Tell us all about it.
So I had my intake on Monday over the phone. Then I went to my doctor's office in Park Slope, where she has a courtyard. She's, in the basement of a townhouse, which is kind of standard in Brooklyn, to where doctor's offices are. And she has a courtyard out back that she set up a tent, covered everything in plastic so it could be down. She was in a face guard with the plastic. She had the mask on. She had her hair covered. She had head to toe with extra gloves, with her gown, everything. And she had marks on the sidewalk outside the courtyard where people would just stand. And she had an appointment every 5 minutes. Now, when I got there was nobody there and nobody waiting, which was amazing. Because I was in there all of 45 minutes and all we did was a blood stick and she, drew my blood, sealed it up and I walked out. I wore a mask and gloves, of course, just, I was outside and that's what you should be doing. And she said that I should have results back by Friday. And even though the test takes less time to develop, it's just the amount of backlog that's at the sites, at the laboratories.
Right.
So that was that. I mean, it was super easy and I am looking very much forward to getting the results back just as curiosity, because at this point we don't know enough to know whether they mean anything or not. I guess I would just be curious to know if I have antibodies, that means I've had it.
Right. At some point.
At some point, I got it.
I know you had a little cough last week, but you don't seem to think that was it.
I think it's fatigue and I think it was my lack of sleeping. And then the addition of, getting the kittens. There's just so many different things happening during that time that, I think it was that, but you never know. It could have been. So
right.
Nothing. I've had nothing since December or before that even.
So you'll let us know the results on Friday's show if you get them early enough for when we record.
Yeah. And she told me in New York right now, testing is available for people who do and do not have symptoms. So folks in New York, if you feel you want to be tested, you can just contact your doctor. Or you can get them directly from several labs. I think Quest Labs is doing it, Quest Diagnostics and LabCorp. So check it out. Did you hear about Germany? They're starting to open.
I hear they're starting to open. I didn't hear it's full on back to normal.
It's not, but they started to open because they had the spread was 0.70%. So basically every person who has coronavirus would infect 0.7 people. So less than 1%. And in the 7 or 10 days that they've been opening, it's already ticked up to 1%.
Oh,
and that is a very rapid rise, apparently. Yeah. They were cautious. They were doing it correctly. So I'm just, I'm looking 10 days ahead of Georgia and Tennessee and, because they're obviously not being as cautious.
So it's interesting the arc the show has taken, and people might be wondering why we're talking about states opening and not film production, but I think it all relates to our eventual reopening and how we're starving for information about the virus and how it transfers from person to person, symptomatically or not, because that affects how we're going to behave on set. Right?
Right. It does. And we'd seen a few posts yesterday from our community that hey, any production managers or producers in Nevada or Atlanta or Georgia, like how's the film community there and such? And I think we saw several responses that were like, we're not opening yet.
Yeah.
Despite what our governors say.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think the way cities and states open and what we learned from all this testing and antibodies and all that, we've been hypothesizing what film production could look like for the past 6 weeks. But really, until we have this information, that's what's going to inform how it's going to work. Should we get to our interview, Christian, with Yehuda?
Oh,
awesome.
Yes.
So first, go to our Take Action page on our website, producershappyhour.com. There, we list a lot of resources for you, a lot of petitions you can sign, a lot of opportunities for you to donate or volunteer, a lot of very important organizations there. Please check them out.
Now, one of the things that I will learn when I receive my test back is if I have antibodies. And if I do, then when I donate blood, platelets will be very important to somebody who's sick. So it's an opportunity for you to do what you can, and you're all making blood on your own. So you may as well give some of it up. You don't need all of it and you'll make more of it. So it'll be perfect.
So check it out. Donate blood, save the post office, donate your unused laptop. Lots of opportunities there to help other people in need.
All right.
Yehuda Duenyas is a primetime Emmy Award-winning experiential director with a focus on immersive new media, storytelling, and technology. He also works as an intimacy coordinator and director for film, TV, and theater.
Yehuda has directed shows, experiences, and commercials with online view counts in the hundreds of millions.
Ooh.
His clients have included Google, Walt Disney Imagineering, Comcast, HBO, Showtime, MGM UA, the Ad Council, Droga 5, and he's directed experiences for properties and brands such as Game of Thrones, Billions, Audi, JetBlue, Dixie, and Cathay Pacific, among others. Wow, that's a laundry list.
That is. Let's take a listen.
So thank you for joining us today, Yehuda. Before we start, I'd love to know how you're doing, how your family's doing. Like you're in LA, right? Downtown, you mentioned?
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm in Los Angeles, downtown LA, and I'm very thankful. My people and family are doing well. We have a little pod of 3 families. We're homeschooling our kids together.
Is it in your building? I mean, are you in a building that has the, okay.
No, I'm downtown, and the people that I'm potting with are in Highland Park and South Pasadena. Mm-hmm. It's been really fortunate. It's been amazing. It's 10 people, including the 3 kids. And so we're just being extremely careful about what we do, not seeing anyone else aside from each other. And when we see each other in person, we don't really, some of us in the group don't have a lot of connection or communication. But we're doing it so that the kids can have some sort of stability and homeschool.
They don't understand.
Yeah.
How old are they?
Yeah. There's 2 7-year-olds, and my daughter just turned 13.
That's fantastic.
So she had a COVID birthday, and so we had a little quarantine party where people came to our walkway and said we scheduled people in 20-minute sessions.
Oh, that's so cool.
And they came and sang to her from the walkway in her 2nd floor window, and it was really super sweet. So I feel very fortunate. I'm in a place where I'm able to observe the world and not have any, knock on wood, very sort of immediate threats to the people that are in my very close circle. My parents are okay. They're up in Santa Clarita. So thank you for asking. And feeling fortunate and very curious about everything that's going on.
Yes.
Just as a side note, I remember my 13th birthday as a girl.
Yeah.
So it's really lovely that you made it special for her, because it is a very special birthday. I know it is for everybody, but especially for girls, it's a big one. So that touches my heart.
Yeah, that's really sweet. There was a birthday party here on our block here in Los Feliz where they had cars come by. And so they sat on the front. They had balloons and signs. Kid was probably, I don't know, maybe 15, but they had just cars go by. And they must have an in at the fire truck because they had a fire truck come through and bring everything. Do the lights. It was pretty cool, but just to see. And then all the neighbors came out. And it's like, we've never met anybody on this block except maybe 3 of them. So it's just lovely to see everybody all kind of out and like yelling happy birthday. That's really sweet.
Yeah.
It's interesting how communities are coming together in a very different way.
Yeah, new communities are forming, and it's very interesting. We're human beings who need connection and contact. And so this is forcing us into still needing to satisfy that urge and need
Right.
in so many different ways. And so I see a lot of creativity, new type of creativity. And obviously, there's no replacement for the real thing, being in space together and holding someone that you love. And my heart really goes out to people who are, estranged from loved ones, estranged from family, people who can't be with the people that they really care about. My parents, for example, are dying to give my daughter a hug.
I'm sure.
And can't. And so I really see, and I see genuine, a type of suffering there on their part. And so there is so much suffering happening at the same time. And so I feel that, and I feel very, my heart goes out to so many people because of that.
Yeah. We talk about it on the show. It's easy to sit around and say, now's the time to regenerate and renew and be creative. Meanwhile, there's a lot of sickness and death and impending poverty and people that can't buy groceries. So, we always acknowledge that.
It's hard to find the balance between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also just anxiety management, I think, for all of us.
Self-medication is what I call it on my end.
Right. Totally. I mean, just the feeling of like, our industry it'll fire back up by the end of the summer or something. Who really knows, and who really knows what that's going to look like and how that's going to happen and
how many people.
I do think it will eventually go back to some semblance of normal. Like we will overcome this, like we've overcome so many other events as human beings.
Yeah. Well, I want to dive into all that with you and creativity. But first, I want to back up and kind of start. What were you doing? What was in your world at the time, right as the pandemic was starting to take hold and you started to realize something serious was happening? Were you on a project? Were you working? Were you just with your family? What was going on in your world at that time?
I was with my family, and also I was poised. There was a couple of jobs that were about to happen. We were pitching on an experience for the Beastie Boys documentary that just came out. I think I was asking to bring you in on it, actually, Lawrence.
Yes, we had a little chat about that. Yes.
And so the Apple immediately shut that. I think that there was just a moment where we had just, communicated with the agency and, got a great treatment and pitch in, and they said, we can't do this. We're preemptively, I feel like it was one of the earlier things to kind of preemptively shut down. Then sort of in a panic, I work as an intimacy coordinator as well. Right. And so I coordinate and direct and choreograph intimate scenes, sex scenes, simulated nudity scenes for film and television. And I just, I booked a gig in Tokyo for a Michael Mann shoot that I was really excited about. And, they were trying to really get me in there under the wire, feeling like that things were about to sort of, and so I had just been to New York for an intimacy coordinator training and had just come back and got this call, and it was fantastic. I was super excited, read through the script. I went shopping for a lot of intimacy gear that we need, modesty garments and stuff like that. And my flight was the next day, and I'm packing the night before, and I get an email from the production saying we're pausing the production for the time being. And so, I think these are stories that everyone has had: mid-production, things shutting down; pre-production, things shutting down. This particular project in Tokyo was already in full stride. They were already in many weeks into a shoot. And so I was sort of coming on already while they were already shooting. So, when Tokyo opens back up, and I think that we can all, start getting back to work, I think that the production should fire back up again. But who knows? I don't know. And I don't know what that will look like.
Nobody knows.
But, even with the conversations that I've been having with the, handful of intimacy coordinators that exist in the world, what intimacy will even look like on screen and on, how that will happen. I do feel like it will get back to some semblance of almost normal eventually. I think it will just take some time.
And time for production to figure out in general how it's going to come back and what it's going to look like. You do a lot of experiential work, and that's kind of your main thing. How has this changed you? We could go on and talk about what's safe to do and what's not safe to do. And I think all that stuff will get figured out. Mm-hmm. But how do you think this has changed you creatively? has this opened you up to new possibilities for branded experiential, or does it feel stifling or unrealistic right now? What's your thinking?
I've seen a lot of really interesting creative projects happen. I've attended a lot of performances on Zoom, people's performances who were canceled, particularly in the art world here in Los Angeles and also in New York City. And so I've attended a lot of different Zoom performances. And I think that it's a really interesting format. I also see that because now we have to communicate over video chat, I've been communicating with so many more, and this is probably everyone's story, a lot of people's stories, that communicating with so many more people than I would have, and also see how easy it is. And also how creative people are being with these platforms. Yes. And so I think that it's really interesting. And I feel like there is so much more opportunity to connect with people over a digital platform, possibly more so than I participated in. I see a lot of people walking down the street FaceTiming, and I'm like, why would you? If someone like cold FaceTimes me, I'm like, what do I look like right now?
Not anymore.
Yeah. Huh?
Not anymore. Like, I'm like, oh, great, a cold FaceTime.
Yeah, exactly.
I get to see somebody.
Yeah, exactly. And so I feel like for me personally, it's sort of changed my perspective in that way, in terms of that digital communication is communication, obviously. I mean, we communicate digitally all the time. However, I don't know, for me personally, if digital communication ever really filled the need for contact, for like personal human to human contact. Talk to friends on the phone, FaceTime with people. I would do obviously a lot of, internet chats and Zoom meetings and G chats for work because we need to meet, but we're separate. But now there's just the actual, like, I just need to be a human and to need to be social and so see people reaching out. My concern about these is that when I meet you in a park, or in a public place, we're on public property and we can have our own discussions and, we're sort of free to roam and do what we want. When we meet in the digital space, we're on private property. Like we're on an ISP's private property. We're in Zoom's private. Right now we're in Squadcast's private property. Right. Yeah. And so I'm really curious about the platforms that we're on. Obviously, there's been, like just the Zoom bombing and like all of that, like all that stuff that's been happening is sort of an interesting form of sort of digital vandalism, or, but it really sort of brings up a deeper question, which is, these platforms that we take for granted, we live inside of these spaces. And so sort of we're owned in a way, like in our communication is owned in that way. And so it brings up a lot of those kinds of questions for me.
I think too, having, worked together, knowing too that you're an intimacy coach. I mean, you are a hands-on kind of guy, meaning like, you're warm and you're friendly, and I feel like I'm the same way. So I miss that so much. Just being able to be around somebody that I don't know and getting to be close to them, or somebody I know and being close to them. I can't do that right now. I mean, and I'm starved for it. So yeah, I jump at the chance to get on a cold FaceTime call, right? I'm kind of at a loss on how to handle it. And that's been part of the anxiety, I think. And also too, the worry about going back to work and having to implement, all these things that we're told. So like, how are you coping right now?
I feel like I'm in a fortunate situation because I have a few people around me that I can actually be in physical contact. I have my daughter, I have my co-parent, I have my partner. I have this sweet pod of people around that's very supportive. And so I'm really lucky. Every day at dinner, I say or whenever I just say I am so grateful for the situation that I've landed in this pandemic. At the same time, I hear it in your voice, Sister Christian, and really empathize and have such compassion for that need, because I know how important it is for me personally. And even just, I'm fortunate my parents are alive and that I have close with my parents, not being able to see them, not being able to really be there for them. We go over to their house sometimes and stand across the yard and, 15 feet away and have.
May I ask how old they are?
They're in their mid-70s.
Yeah.
74 and 76. And you're right. I work in Experiential. I work as an intimacy coordinator. All of these things are about people They're about proximity and connection.
And skin.
There's some skin involved.
And some skin.
Yeah.
It's an occasional amount of skin.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's interesting with the intimacy coordination because a lot of it is also about boundaries. And I feel like that is something that we really need to, exercise right now, is this idea of boundaries and what are our personal boundaries, what will make us feel safe, what does make us feel safe, what will actually keep us safe. And so I feel like I'm trying to, through my own anxiety, which obviously I think that we all share a sense of anxiety over what's happening, through my own personal anxiety, I'm trying to look at this idea of boundaries and what that is. And I feel like this pandemic has imposed a new set of, problems to solve, a new sets of types of boundaries.
Right.
When I work in intimacy coordination, so much of it is about, having a conversation with the performers, having a conversation with the director. The director says, this is my vision and this is what I want. And then I have a conversation with the actors or performers and say, so we all know this, we see the script, we see what's written. This is the director's vision. This is what the director wants. What are you comfortable with? Like, what are your boundaries? Like, what can we do and what can't we do? How are we going to make this feel safe?
Right.
And I think that work is something that is actually in the past, like maybe 7 years of my life, I've been a very boundaryless person, like not even knowing what my own boundaries are. Like, yes, I'll do anything. I'll work at 4 a.m. on an 80-foot tower. Yeah. I'm the director, but you need me to rig something? Sure. Give me the wrench.
I'll rig it.
Give me the wrench and a harness, and I will climb up the 80-foot tower and, do it myself. And so I feel like, in a way, this pandemic, because there's such a mortal affliction and it's unclear what that is. For some people, it can be a horrible death of dying alone. Like they don't, like you can't even have a loved one holding your hand as you die of suffocation. I think that it's so horrible. Yeah. And then to other people that it doesn't really affect them and they can be a silent carrier. I feel like the unknown nature of the sickness too it causes a lot of fear.
Yeah, it's terrifying. I mean, we've just been talking about it earlier today, Christian and I. It's like there's so much unknown. How are we supposed to reopen business and go back to work? And
we're usually the ones with the answers. And I think what I'm struggling with right now is, I think you mentioning boundaries. I don't know that I've had them before. And so what I'm struggling with now is actually figuring out how to tell somebody I've been working with for a very long time, whomever that may be, that no, I have a boundary now and I'm not going to be the same as I was before. I know that. Or it may take me a very long time to get there, but I understand now that I can have control over my own self and that I don't have to give it away.
Absolutely.
And I was doing that so much. Oh, sure. What do you got? No problem. Midnight emails? No problem. Like, whatever.
On our last episode, I had such a great year, work-wise, career-wise. But at the end of it, I was just completely exhausted, spent. Like, it damn near killed me, just with anxiety.
Right.
Speaking of boundaries for an intimacy scene and boundaries for who we want to be and how we want to come out of this situation and work and go about our lives now that we've had this great pause. It's an interesting experience because I think we're all kind of understanding our new boundaries and what's important to us.
In this industry, we're just trained to say yes. Like we need, we need to satisfy our clients. We need to offer the most amazing Club Med buffet of creative options that they can choose from and always be saying yes. And there isn't a no. Yeah. Something that's really interesting to me about the intimacy coordination work is that a performer has every right to say no. And like, that's something as the core. And actors don't want to say no because they want to work again. No one wants to be seen as difficult or causing any sort of hiccup or delay in a production because you want to work and you want to remain viable. And that does not mean that you have no rights.
Right.
And so something that's been so powerful about the intimacy coordination work is really explaining to performers, like, you absolutely, like, you can say no. Like, can I stick my finger up your nose right now? And the answer is typically no. And like, so you have boundaries and you actually have rights as a performer on a set and a set of guidelines that we lay out that are really being formulated right now that allow you to take responsibility for yourself and to say, no, I'm not comfortable doing that. And that's going to make me feel unsafe or trigger me in a certain way. Is there another way to do that? And from my perspective, there are so many ways to tell a story. There are so many ways to make a scene happen. There are so many ways to get the effect that we want. And one of my lines with this work is, with the intimacy work in particular, is that you don't have to see it, but you definitely have to feel it. And I think that there are so many ways to feel things. And that doesn't always mean that you have to see it all.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of the power that we have as storytellers is the imagination of our viewers. I think it's the most powerful tool that we have. How do we spark the imagination of the people that are viewing or experiencing the work, the content that we're making? And so there's been something kind of empowering about that. Like when you now go into your local supermarket and someone is not wearing a mask, you're like, what the F? What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Every time.
Get away from me.
Sir,
or even,
please take a step back.
Even in my building, we have an elevator. Like I was in the elevator with my daughter wearing our masks and someone was about to come in and I like put my hand up and was like, you know,
I don't know you.
I have a boundary. Whereas in the past, I would have just, you know, obviously an elevator wouldn't be a big deal in the past.
I would have hugged them. I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, of course.
Come over.
But in a situation where I might have wanted to say no, I would have just bitten my tongue.
Right.
And now I think because there's
out
sort
of politeness.
Right, out of politeness or social decorum or not wanting to. But there's something really empowering about saying, no, this is my space. And
it's kind of my favorite thing.
Yeah, you're giving permission to let people express their boundaries. And I think this experience has now given people permission to express or explore their boundaries in brand new ways, because we're all kind of starting from scratch.
Absolutely. Right? And I think some of the fallout from this is going to be that there's going to be different levels of fear and anxiety moving forward.
And they all have to be validated.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And so we might have a vaccine in 18 months. And, you know, I'd be like, I was vaccinated, I'm fine. And someone might still feel like the social distancing, I feel like, is a form of trauma in a way that I think that people, there will be some PTSD from it. I don't know the extent of it, but I think that for some people, the isolation is actually traumatic. It's trauma inducing.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be some PTSD for people coming out of this. And, you know, Yehuda, I'm in a couple forums now of people discussing how film production is going to come back to work safely. And everybody has a different opinion. Everybody has a different fear or a different experience or a different boundary. And so it's a mishmash right now of conversations about how to make it work.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I feel like we always exist in that mishmash of place, and there's this continual negotiation of what is correct and what we feel like is sort of a reality. But now with this really stark consequence of this sickness that you could get, the lines around your own personal space, which could potentially be blurred in situations, and, you know, to get something done or to get a job. I mean, you and I have been on projects together, Lawrence, where we've got someone else in the mix who what they're saying is clearly completely wrong. And because we are in the position that you and I are in the positions that we're in, myself as the creative and you as the line producer, we just have to say, okay, great. Whereas inside, what we're saying is, fuck no.
You're wrong.
You're totally wrong. And,
wrong.
You're about to cost us a lot of money. But because of the structure, we just have to say yes. But now that, like, maybe I feel like my health or my life, or, like, you know, it's not just my health, it's the health of my family and the people that I'm connected to around, I think that people will start taking a much sort of a harder stance. And so I think, like, the tools of negotiation and really, like, a lot of compassion, I think, is very going to be super necessary to just understand that, you know, people are trying to give people the benefit of the doubt and saying that, you know, hopefully people are coming from a place of, you know, wanting to do good and wanting to get things done, but then also understanding that, you know, people are operating with an increased level of anxiety and making space for that. I'm a very accommodating person too. I think we're trained to do this in what we do, you know, it's like always accommodate.
Right. We were just talking about this, I think, in yesterday's episode, Christian, with Lisa Feldman. The consequences is somebody's life.
Yeah.
Right.
If something's wrong on set and we haven't taken care of everything.
Yeah.
Consequence is somebody getting sick.
What concerns me the most, and I know I've been on this for several days now, but I can't shake it. The unrealistic expectations of, trying to perform the way that we used to.
Mm-hmm.
Things are going to take more time. Things are going to take more money. Clients are going to get less bang for their buck, as you say. Mm-hmm. Managing those expectations, because we are the ones who are going to be implementing the new guidelines.
Mm-hmm. Right. Have you noticed too at the same time though that, I'm seeing like Saturday Night Live from the cast members as living rooms, everything's so different,
Yeah.
Everything's so different.
And I think you just posted something on Facebook, Lawrence, about like designer clothes, like who needs the designer clothes now? No one's going out, there's a lot,
like who's advertising?
There's a lot of things that feel so different. And so I'm sort of excited to see what the new expectations are. And sort of how this has shown us a different side of our worlds. Like we're seeing everyone through screens on sometimes bad backgrounds, sometimes great backgrounds. Not everyone is camera savvy, but it's really about sort of this face on the other side of the screen and this, this soul and this person, and really trying to have a connection with them. I feel like even the consumer expectation is now different. And so I'm curious to see how all of these expectations are now reordered and readjusted, and how fast it'll just snap back to normal. I'm curious about that.
Right.
Like in a year and a half, we're going to be like, wow, I kind of, as painful as it was, as much weird suffering and stuff as there was. And I'm sure some people are in situations where they never wish to go back to this. I can imagine some people being like, that was a really interesting, strange, quiet time. The air in Los Angeles is clear. I can get anywhere in 15 minutes in Los Angeles. 4 p.m. I could drive to Malibu and it'll take me 45 minutes from downtown. Yeah. And it's not just traffic, it's not just air, but there's just a different way of people relating, and also understanding what is necessary and important. And sometimes the things that we think are necessary and important, when we really get down to it, might not be, and that's okay. And I feel like allowing for those things to change and to get to a space where we can understand what it is that we need in terms of connection, in terms of human beings, it might be a wonderful thing for the industry.
Yeah, all of our priorities have shifted, our worlds have gotten smaller, and we're really being reminded what it means to be human.
And somehow bigger too. Like I have family in Israel, like I never FaceTime with them.
No way.
I'm seeing so many people that I haven't seen before. And so it's really expanding the world in a way too, because there's nothing else to do except for reach out. I mean, there's lots of stuff to do, but in a way, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, felt like we're like, well, I'm stuck at home. What do I do? I'm going to reach out to all the people that I know and see how they're doing. So there's been a real sort of reordering, reshifting of priorities, which has been super interesting.
Along those lines, we like to ask if you have any advice, right? But I think that it's more about, do you have any advice for the creative folks out there who are craving that intimacy or connection or those human moments, who maybe don't quite know or understand how to get it safely? Do you have any advice for those folks out there?
Yeah, I think that right now, a friend put this to me very clearly and was saying that pleasure is one of the most important things that we can engage in right now. And I think intimacy and pleasure are so, I personally, in my life, think that they're so important. In terms of advice, I don't know. However, I would say that moving towards pleasure and, being kind to yourself and to your body, to the people around you. My friends are, who are singly quarantined and don't have a quarantine, as Dan Savage says.
Yes, he's great.
Are dating, and like having video dates with people or going on distance walks. And I think that connecting with people in any way that you can, I personally think is really important. I think that, some video sex is always like really, something that's really great and can be in order. I see the opportunity for a lot of creativity. And I feel like listening to yourself and your body and saying, how can I get the thing that I need, even if I can't get it in the exact way that I need it and want it in this moment.
Allowing yourself to be open to the possibilities, basically.
Yeah. And I think that, we need to take a little bit of, there are some personal risk. I don't mean I was about to say, we need to take a little bit of some risk right now. And I don't mean risk in terms of like, just go and see someone who's not, I don't mean that kind of risk, but, putting out there, with somebody that this is something that you do need, and like really connecting with what it is that you need and want, and asking for it, and also giving it to, the people around you, and asking people what it is that they need in this particular moment. I don't know. I think intimacy and pleasure are so important, and they just, that just makes things better. That's my personal thing. It's not for everyone, not everyone feels that way. Sure. And I think that people, there's other priorities. I think that if you can be kind to yourself, give yourself a little bit of a break right now. I hear people like, if you're not being productive and learning 3 new languages and like, blah, 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 teaching yourself a new program or whatever, then you're not taking advantage of this moment. It's like there's a lot of instability, a lot of anxiety, a lot of insecurity. I think some deep breaths, connecting with people, as much intimacy as you can have. I've been doing some interesting things on the video chats of like, let's light a candle together. Like just do a thing that you're both doing in a similar space. And so that, or dress up to have your video chat and create a nice background,
exactly. Put on your favorite outfit.
Yeah,
that's a fun
put an outfit. Or I think that there's room for some creativity. And also I think there's really a lot of space for just understanding that people are in a lot of need right now. And there's a lot of, again, just the word anxiety has come up like 30 times in this conversation.
It comes up so many times every day for us.
I think people need some soothing right now. And I feel like if you can provide that for someone and receive it in return, I think that would be a very important and special thing. And focus on pleasure, I think, is really important.
We want to thank you so much for spending some time to chat with us today. You really bring a very unique perspective to this with your work as an intimacy coordinator. So we thank you for chatting with us. But what is the one thing that you are most looking forward to once this, it's not really going to end, it's going to change, right? But whether it's, like your favorite drink at a bar or world peace, what is the one thing you're looking forward to coming out of this?
I'm definitely looking forward to world peace now that you bring that up.
Let's form a committee.
Perfect. I'm really looking forward. I am looking forward to working again. That's one thing, because I love what I do, and I feel like what I do involves people and involves experience. So I'm looking forward to being in the same room with people. And I have this conversation almost daily. What's the first thing you're going to do? Not like there's ever going to be like a first moment where it's like, open the door and run out. It's going to be, obviously it'll be a gradual process. I miss traveling. I really love to travel. And so I feel like I would love to just go have brunch with my parents again. I would love to see some friends. And I think it's really sort of reordered some priorities. Sure, like I'd love to go get a drink at the bar that I like to do. But, I've also I haven't missed eating out. Like I've been cooking, and I personally haven't missed eating out at restaurants, though I really do want to support the businesses around me. And I'm definitely going to, go and patronize some local establishments, especially with the ones that I love, hopefully if they're still there. And hoping that they are. It's really kind of some of the little things, the things that we take for granted in terms of, just being out in the world, being among people, going to a concert, like being in a mosh pit in a concert. Can you imagine?
I love a good mosh pit.
Will that ever happen? We were driving downtown thinking of the Women's March. There was 700,000 people that first year. And I remember like it being sandwiched, like there was only one way to go. It was like just like a vast sea of people being sandwiched. And I remember like inching closer and closer to Donald Sutherland, who's like 6'7". I'm like
part of the way for you.
Holy shit. Like I'm getting closer and closer to Donald Sutherland until the point where we're chest to chest being pushed up against each other. And I asked him, I'm like, you worked with Fellini. What was that like?
Oh my gosh.
No way. What did he say?
He was like, he laughed, and then we got pushed, like it didn't turn into a conversation. It was like we were being like pushed by the forces of
the crowd,
the crowds of people, which is such a, that's one of the most joyous things, is to be amongst our fellow humans and to connect. And so I hope that we get back to that. I hope that, the kids growing up now who are sort of seeing this pandemic as sort of like a new normal. I hope that is something that we can maintain in terms of something that we do. I think it's so ingrained in us as humans to gather and to be, to be social in that way. I can't imagine it not coming back, but then I kind of also can imagine it, changing in that way, in the same way that 9/11 forever changed the way we deal with airports. And it's just, that's kind of normal.
Still taking our shoes off.
Yeah. There's going to be obviously some lasting effects. I am looking forward to being around people again and to really getting into a room and being able to have close human contact without fear in the same way. Or hopefully it'll be fear like, I got my flu shot. I still might get a version of the flu, but it's something that it's a known quantity that I can now deal with. And I kind of think that we'll get to that point. Mm-hmm. Obviously don't know when. That's my personal feeling, but we'll obviously have to see.
Yeah. I definitely want to be able to trust the person that I'm meeting or seeing or with. And right now, I think I've lost a lot of trust too, like the person who's delivering the package or the, deli guy or whomever you have to deal with, or the person walking towards you on the street. I know what I'm doing. I don't know what they're doing.
We don't know what they're doing.
And they can say, and that's, another thing going back to work, like we're on our honor system.
Mm-hmm, totally.
Yeah.
And so trust, I think, is a big one for me too.
Yeah. We have a much different sense of responsibility now to the people around us. And we just hope that everyone shares your values, and not everyone shares the same values. No. And so that is something that the idea of trust, I think, is huge what you're bringing up.
It's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, a whole other episode. And how to establish it, how to regain it, how to create a new sense of moral standing or something. That you have to seeing yourself as part of a larger group. Yeah. Like me protecting myself from the pandemic is not just protecting myself. But I think it's like if you have it on average, you give it to 2.5 people. I don't know, some statistic,
something like that.
It was an older statistic, but I remember it. And that's a big deal. Like you give it to the wrong person, and that can be, life effect, obviously super life affecting. So it does show that we're part of a much larger group of people, which I think is beautiful. We're humans on a planet surviving, working to figure things out together and have a big responsibility to one another. And I think that's hopefully a wonderful lesson of this time.
I know. I'm looking forward to that.
Yehuda, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Yes, thank you for your time.
Such a pleasure. Really nice. It's great to speak with both of you, and I'm honored that you asked me to come on.
Again, I hate repeating myself, Lawrence. Actually, I don't. I love repeating myself because I think I sound smart. Every time we hear one of these interviews, I hear something that I need.
Yeah.
And, I think I'm working out how I feel here.
Yeah. Here
and
on
it
the
makes
show.
a lot the discussion of boundaries makes a lot of sense to me right now.
Boundaries and permission.
Yeah.
We're given permission to voice and stand behind our new boundaries. Yeah. The unknown is that we're still discovering those boundaries because we still don't know how this virus proliferates through non-symptomatic people, but boundaries and permission, more than just work, right?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Like for our lives, we now have new boundaries and the permission to explore them and express them. And that's really important.
And to set them.
Yeah.
And I just don't know that even as adults that in the industry that we're in, that I've felt comfortable doing it in a way, of course, safety, of course.
Yeah.
There's that. But there's always the need to figure out how to say yes when the answer should be no.
Yeah. Which is, exactly. Yeah. Special thanks to Yehuda. He is such an amazing guy. He doesn't know this yet, but I am going to employ him to be my life coach.
What? When is that?
He doesn't know. He doesn't know this yet. I got to get a job first, and then I can afford.
No, he's got. Yeah, exactly.
No, he's a great guy, and he's highly
yeah.
talented, highly
Yeah.
creative, and really gets the
Yeah.
human experience, which is what makes him such a good experiential director.
He does good human.
He does good human.
Yeah.
He does.
So, well, Lawrence, this show was edited and co-produced by Rob Blumke.
Artwork and logo design by Christopher Daniels.
And our unused but amazing music was composed by Kyle Puccia.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. We're back tomorrow. Until then, stay safe, stay connected, stay active, but please stay home.
Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Clean your damn phone. And if you do have to leave the house, wear a mask.
Be sure to send us your voice recordings or emails to producershappyhour@gmail.com.
Lawrence, how do people reach you directly?
They can get me at lawrencetLewis.com to see all my producing work, or for voiceover, voiceoflawrence.com. Christian, how do people get a hold of you?
If they really, really need me, they can go to sisterchristianproduces.com, but do not judge.
You're updating it. It'll be
Sure.
a new website soon.
I mean, you know what? Who are we kidding? Subscription challenge. All right. Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank
I'll see you
you.
tomorrow.
Bye.
Okay, bye.